Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 69.
We are looking at a chapter 69 of the classic Chinese text, Dream of the Red Chamber.
Right.
Now, for those who might not be familiar with the sheer scale of this world, could you set the scene for us? Like, where are we and what are the stakes?
Yeah, of course. So we are stepping into the incredibly wealthy, incredibly powerful Jia family compound. And to call it a home is a massive understatement. This is essentially a small, self-contained city of aristocrats, complete with its own complex hierarchy and hundreds of servants.
Wow.
Yeah, it was massive. And our main player today is a woman named Wang Xifeng. She is the fierce, calculating matriarch in training of this family. Her entire life's work is managing the optics, the wealth, and the power dynamics of this massive estate.
And she is about to orchestrate an incredibly tense moment. She is bringing a woman named Erjie into the main family home, and Erjie is the secret new wife of Xifeng's husband.
Yes, exactly.
And Xifeng is bringing this secret wife right through the front doors to meet the ultimate authority figure of the entire clan, Grandmother Jia. Which, what does it actually mean to be a secret wife in this context?
Well, in this deeply patriarchal society, wealthy men frequently took multiple wives or concubines. However, there were strict rules of etiquette, hierarchy, and family approval required. For Xifeng's husband to take a new wife in secret, outside the main compound, is a massive breach of protocol.
It's a huge deal.
Exactly. It's a direct threat to Xifeng's authority as the primary wife. So when she discovers this, she doesn't throw a tantrum. She executes this highly calculated political maneuver to bring the threat out of the shadows and right into her own domain.
Okay, let's unpack this grand entrance because it is so loaded with tension. Xifeng walks into the main hall with this beautiful, terrified young woman.
Yeah.
And I assumed Grandmother Jia would just offer a, polite greeting.
You'd think so.
But that is not what happens. It is a highly specific, almost clinical, physical inspection. She literally puts on her glasses to get a better look and then asks her servants to bring Erjie closer so she can inspect her. And this is the translation, her meat skin.
Yes.
Which, first of all, is a very visceral translation.
It is a very striking phrase. In the original context, she is scrutinizing her complexion, the literal quality of her physical form. Grandmother Jia isn't welcoming a new family member.
No.
She is evaluating a newly acquired asset. She wants to see if this woman meets the aesthetic and physical standards expected of a Jia family possession.
And it gets even more invasive. Grandmother Jia actually has a servant lift Erjie's skirt specifically to check her hands.
Yeah.
Erjie is just forced to stand there answering questions, deliberately bowing her head, playing the part of the submissive, perfect addition to the family. What is the psychology behind this specific type of inspection?
It's about establishing absolute dominance from the very first second. By having her physically examined in front of the entire household, Grandmother Jia is reminding Erjie that she has no autonomy here.
Wow. Yeah.
She is measuring this new woman against the established standards of the house and specifically comparing her to Xifeng herself. It totally strips Erjie of any power or dignity she might have held in that secret house outside the compound.
And the verdict from the matriarch. Grandmother Jia takes off her glasses, nods, and declares Erjie a complete child.
High praise in that context.
Right. And she even looks right at Xifeng and says, I think she is even more beautiful than you.
Ouch.
Which feels like a total slap in the face.
Yeah.
But Xifeng doesn't miss a single beat. She immediately drops to her knees, smiling, and launches into this completely fabricated story.
And this is where Xifeng's genius really shines. Instead of showing jealousy, she completely rewrites the narrative for the elders. She blames another branch of the family for the whole secret marriage situation.
Washing her hands of it.
Exactly. She completely washes her husband's and her own hands of the messiness. She frames herself as the victim of someone else's poor planning, but then pivots to being incredibly magnanimous.
Right. She suggests that Erjie be allowed to move to the wing room of the main house, but she adds a massive catch.
She does.
She tells Grandmother Jia, oh, please have mercy, let her stay, but we must delay the consummation of the marriage for a full year. And Grandmother Jia absolutely eats it up. She praises Xifeng for being so virtuous and good.
Yeah.
Why add that specific condition about waiting a year?
What's fascinating here is the sheer brilliance of Xifeng's trap. Delaying the consummation does two things.
Okay.
First, it prevents Erjie from getting pregnant, which would immediately elevate her status and give her permanent power in the family.
Oh, wow. All right.
Second, by bringing Erjie into the main house on her own terms and securing the blessing of Grandmother Jia, Xifeng completely neutralizes Erjie as an independent threat.
So she goes from being a hidden rival to a house guest under 24/7 surveillance.
Exactly. Erjie is no longer a secret wife living out of sight where Xifeng can't control her. She is right under Xifeng's roof, bound by the rules Xifeng just established. She has trapped her rival in a web and managed to do it while looking like an absolute saint to the family elders.
It is terrifyingly smart. She engineers a scenario where her husband's secret wife is now a prisoner of her hospitality.
Pretty much.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because keeping Erjie in the house is only phase one of Xifeng's plan.
Just the beginning.
The real goal isn't just to contain Erjie, it's to completely destroy her. And Xifeng decides to play an invisible game of 4D chess to make it happen.
The double game. It requires a staggering level of deceit and resourcefulness.
Yeah, while Xifeng is inside the house, smiling and acting like the most loving, supportive sister to Erjie, she is secretly funding the enemy outside the house.
Yep.
She tracks down a man named Zhang Hua, who is Erjie's former betrothed. Their engagement was broken off, but Xifeng secretly sends her servants to instigate him. She doesn't just suggest he sues the Jia family to get his wife back. She actually pays him to do it. She gives him silver, promises him more, and coaches him on exactly what to say to the local magistrate.
She is manufacturing a crisis from thin air. She's utilizing the external legal system to force a domestic outcome. But to understand why she thinks this will work, you have to understand the legal system of this era.
Okay, tell us about that.
It was deeply intertwined with the local aristocracy. The courts were not impartial arbiters of justice. They were heavily influenced by the wealthy families who funded and bribed them.
Which leads to this almost comical level of corruption in the text. When the ex-fiancé, Zhang Hua, first files his lawsuit, the court officials look at it and realize they have ties to the powerful Jia family.
They know exactly who pays their bills.
Exactly. So they don't even accept the lawsuit. They just declare Zhang Hua a rascal trying to extort money, have him physically beaten, and throw him out into the street.
The irony is rich. The Jia family is so untouchable that even a lawsuit secretly funded by their own matriarch gets thrown out to protect them from scandal.
But it gets crazier. The court official who actually administers the beating to Zhang Hua is secretly one of Xifeng's own loyal servants.
Unbelievable.
And he makes sure not to hit the guy too hard, because immediately after Zhang Hua is thrown out of the court, this same servant pulls him aside in the alley and whispers, "No, you have to sue again. Just demand the marriage. The judge will eventually give her to you."
It is a completely orchestrated farce. Xifeng then has another servant quietly tip off the magistrate about how they're supposed to rule.
Oh.
So the court issues a new, highly specific ruling. They dictate that Zhang Hua must repay some old debts to the Jia family, but officially rule that he retains the right to marry Erjie once he has the money.
It blows my mind. Why go through all this trouble? Why risk a public legal scandal for your incredibly proud aristocratic family?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about making the problem disappear without leaving fingerprints.
Right.
She wants to create such a massive, annoying internal crisis that the elders, specifically Grandmother Jia, feel completely overwhelmed. She wants Grandmother Jia to get so frustrated by the messy legal battle that she voluntarily throws Erjie out of the house just to make the headache stop.
Oh, I see.
Xifeng wants the rejection to come from the very top so her own hands remain perfectly clean. She creates the fire so that she can be the one to calmly suggest they evacuate the building.
That is a brilliant analogy. But the fire doesn't quite burn the way she wants it to?
Not at all.
Her perfectly laid plan hits a major snag. Xifeng goes to Grandmother Jia, acting all panicked, saying, "Oh no, there's a lawsuit. The family name is being dragged through the mud. It's all so messy."
Playing the part perfectly.
But Erjie actually finds her voice and speaks up. She defends herself, pointing out to the elders that her mother officially paid to cancel that betrothal. She makes it clear that the ex-fiancé is just desperate and lying.
And this is where Xifeng miscalculates Grandmother Jia's priorities.
Yeah.
Grandmother Jia doesn't blame Erjie, and she doesn't throw her out. She just gets annoyed at the inconvenience of it all. She essentially looks at Xifeng and says, "You are a highly capable manager. Go make this annoying little man go away."
Just handle it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She doesn't care about the legal nuance. She just wants the noise to stop.
Which completely backfires on Xifeng. She wanted a dramatic expulsion, and instead she's just been handed chores.
Yeah, she had to clean up her own fake mess.
This forces Xifeng to deploy one of the family fixers, a man from the household who handles their dirty work, Jia Rong. And the way this fixer handles the situation is a stark contrast to Xifeng's invisible, delicate web. It is brutal, straightforward efficiency.
The mask of the legal system is completely dropped here. We see the raw, unchecked power of the aristocracy.
Right. The fixer goes directly to the ex-fiancé and his father, and there is no more pretending about court rulings or debts. He tells them flat out, you have the silver we gave you. Do you really want the woman? If you keep pushing this lawsuit, do you realize you're going to make the masters angry?
A very real threat.
And then he drops this chilling line. He says, we will find a reason, and you will die without a burial place.
Die without a burial place. In this cultural context, that isn't just a threat of murder. It's a threat of complete spiritual and familial erasure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it means your body will be left to the elements, you won't be honored by your ancestors, and you will be wiped from existence.
Faced with a threat like that, the ex-fiancé makes the very logical choice. They take the bribe. The text notes it's about 100 taels of silver.
For a commoner, a few taels could feed a family for a year.
Oh my gosh.
100 taels is enough to start a new life, buy land, or establish a business in another province. It's an offer they simply cannot refuse, especially when the alternative is death.
So they take the silver and they flee. The text says they slip out of their home at the 5th watch, heading back to their native registry.
Right.
I had to look this up. The 5th watch basically means they ran for their lives in the dead of night, somewhere between 3 and 5 a.m., just trying to disappear before the sun came up.
Very dramatic.
And the family fixer reports back that the problem is solved, the court case is abandoned, and everything is fine.
But everything is not fine for Xifeng. This is the turning point where her psychology shifts from offensive, calculated control to sheer paranoia.
So what does this all mean for Xifeng's state of mind? On paper, she is sitting there victorious. The lawsuit is gone. Erjie is still trapped in the house under her thumb. But I'm guessing in a family this obsessed with reputation, a neat bow like that doesn't stay tied for long.
You're exactly right to be suspicious, because Xifeng realizes she just made a massive tactical error. In the text, she calls it handing someone a knife handle.
A knife handle, yeah.
By paying an outsider to sue her own family, she gave a commoner a weapon that could be used to destroy her. What if he runs out of that 100 taels of silver in a few years? What if he comes back and blackmails her?
Because if word ever got out that the virtuous, perfect Wang Xifeng orchestrated a lawsuit against the Jia family just to settle a petty domestic grudge,
Oh, it would be a disaster.
her life would be over.
Her reputation is her sole source of power. If she is exposed as the architect of this scandal, her virtuous mask shatters, and she would likely be stripped of her authority or cast out. She cannot tolerate that loose end. The risk is simply too high.
So she escalates. She crosses a terrifying line from manipulation into outright villainy. She calls in her most trusted servant, a man named Wanger, and gives him a kill order.
Yeah.
She tells him to track down the ex-fiancé. The order is clear: either frame him for a capital crime like theft and let the corrupt courts execute him, or just hire an assassin to kill him on the road. She literally says she needs to cut the grass at its roots.
And this brings us to what is arguably the most profound moral centerpiece in this entire chapter. Xifeng, the wealthy, highly educated, powerful aristocrat who is constantly praised for her virtue, has absolutely no moral boundaries when it comes to protecting her status.
None at all.
But Wanger, the lowly, uneducated servant who is supposed to just be an extension of her will, suddenly hits a hard moral wall.
It is such an incredible moment in the text. Wanger takes the kill order, walks out, and actually stops to think about it. And he decides, and this is direct translation, that human life is not child's play.
That's right.
He realizes that murdering an innocent man over a wealthy family's domestic squabble is entirely unjustified. So the servant decides to disobey the master.
It is a massive risk for someone in his position. Servants in this era were essentially property. Disobeying a direct order from the matriarch, especially one concerning a secret of this magnitude, could easily result in severe beating, exile, or death.
Yeah, he had everything to lose.
Yet he recognizes the sanctity of life in a way that the sophisticated aristocrat completely ignores. He chooses fundamental human morality over blind obedience.
I love that contrast. The woman at the top of society is totally depraved, and the man at the very bottom is the only one with a working compass. So Wanger has to figure out how to survive this. He hides out for a few days to make it look like he's out of town on the job. Then he comes back to the compound and lies right to Xifeng's face. He spins this elaborate, incredibly convenient tale.
What does he tell her?
He says, oh, it's a tragedy. Zheng Huo had all that silver on him, and on the third day of his escape, Highwaymen ambushed him at an inn. They hit him with a club, killed him for his money, and his elderly father was so terrified he died of fright right there on the spot.
Wow.
It is a very neat, tidy little story.
Almost too neat. And Xifeng suspects it. She immediately threatens him, saying, "If you are lying to me, I will have someone knock your teeth out."
Yikes.
But she doesn't actually push it any further.
Why do you think she lets it drop so easily? She's usually so meticulous.
Because the lie gives her the plausible deniability she desperately craves. She wants the problem to be over. Investigating further would require her to dig back into the dirt she's trying to walk away from.
That makes sense.
The problem is technically resolved in her mind, even if she suspects her servant didn't actually pull the trigger.
And once that loose end is supposedly tied up in her mind, her mask snaps right back into place. The text specifically notes that after ordering a hit on Erjie's ex-fiancé, Xifeng returns to the inner quarters and acts 10 times better to Erjie than a blood sister would.
10 times better.
She is pouring tea, all smiles, all warmth, absolute perfection. It is deeply chilling to read.
It highlights her terrifying capacity for compartmentalization. She can calmly order an assassination in the morning and then play the role of the nurturing, protective sister in the afternoon.
It's wild.
In that moment, she truly believes she has achieved total control of her environment. Her rival is contained, the external threat is supposedly dead, and her reputation is spotless.
But the universe, or at least the social structure, has a very twisted sense of humor.
It really does.
Because just when Xifeng thinks she has won the war, her husband, Jie finally returns from his long business trip. And remember, he is the one who secretly married Erjie and set her up in that outside house in the first place.
Right.
He rides into town, goes straight to his secret love nest, and finds the doors padlocked with just a confused old caretaker standing there.
He must have been terrified.
The text says he stomps his feet in the stirrups in pure frustration when he hears that his wife found out and moved Erjie into the main compound.
He realizes immediately that Xifeng has completely outmaneuvered him while he was away. He knows he has to go back to the main house and face the music. He expects anger, tears, and a massive power struggle.
Right. So he goes to the main compound to formally report on his business trip to his elders. And here is the ultimate crushing irony of this entire narrative.
Here we go.
He completed his business tasks so well while he was away that his elders are absolutely thrilled with him. They reward him with 100 taels of silver. But they decide silver isn't enough for a job well done. So they give him a 17-year-old maid named Q Tong to take as a brand new concubine.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. What is the true cost and the ultimate futility of Xifeng's constant scheming? Think about what you just went through.
Everything.
She exhausted immense financial resources, risked her pristine reputation, corrupted the local legal system, and literally ordered a murder, all to eliminate one single rival. And in a passing moment of casual conversation, the patriarchal system she is trying so desperately to master simply hands her husband a brand new one.
It is a spectacular failure of a perfect plan. Jie comes back to Xifeng's private quarters trailing this new 17-year-old girl. He's expecting a massive fight about Erjie, feeling deeply ashamed of getting caught. But Xifeng greets him with a radiant smile, standing arm in arm with Erjie. She is playing the perfect accommodating wife to the hilt. But then Jie proudly introduces his new reward, Q Tong.
How does Xifeng react in that moment?
Internally, she completely breaks. The text describes her hidden rage with such poetry, she thinks to herself, one thorn not removed, another added out of nowhere. But she cannot show a single ounce of that fury.
She can't. The rules of the society dictate that she must accept this gift from the family elders with absolute grace and gratitude.
Right.
To show anger would be to defy the elders and ruin the very reputation she just committed crimes to protect. It is a crushing defeat disguised as a celebration.
So she swallows her anger. She sends a luxury carriage to pick up the new 17-year-old rival's belongings. She throws a lavish welcome banquet. She pastes that terrifying smile back on her face. And on the 12th day of the 12th lunar month, Xifeng is left standing in the wreckage of her own perfect plan, forced to host a party for the very things she tried to destroy.
It is a profound and tragic look at the limits of control. She mastered the individuals around her, she manipulated the courts, but she could not master the systemic machinery of the world she lived in. Meanwhile, have you ever worked in a truly toxic environment where the person causing all the chaos somehow manages to convince the boss
Oh, yeah.
and everyone else that they are the victim?
Oh, the classic workplace sociopath.
Exactly. You probably know the type. They are pulling all the strings behind the scenes, setting people up to fail, but in public, they project this image of complete innocence and virtue.
It's maddening.
It is maddening to witness.
Because this isn't a story about fleeting jealousy, it's about systemic survival. In the highly structured aristocratic society of the Qing dynasty, your reputation and the favor of the family's matriarchs and patriarchs, well, those are literal matters of life and death.
Wow.
If you lose your institutional backing, you have no safety net. None.
So if we look at the board, we have Wang Xifeng. She holds the ultimate high ground. She's the primary wife, the manager of the entire household, and really our central architect of the drama.
The puppet master.
Exactly. But Erjie's position is inherently precarious. She is a beautiful secondary wife who was brought into the household secretly, so she lacks any formal institutional backing or public recognition.
Right, which makes her a prime target.
And then we have Jia, the husband, who is, well, he's oblivious and driven entirely by his newest desires. And finally, a highly disruptive new piece on the board, Qitong, a deeply arrogant new concubine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Starting with Xifeng's opening maneuver.
Right, so Xifeng understands that a direct, open confrontation with you, Erjie, is a strategic mistake.
Because of the optics.
Exactly. A primary wife is legally and socially obligated to appear magnanimous and accommodating. Showing open jealousy would damage her own standing. So she initiates a campaign of, I guess what modern psychologists would call systematic degradation. She needs to break Erjie down without leaving any fingerprints.
And she starts with passive neglect.
Yeah.
So Xifeng pretends to be sick, right? Using that as an excuse to just avoid eating meals with Erjie altogether. But behind the scenes, Xifeng orchestrates this severe drop in Erjie's living conditions. The daily meals delivered to Erjie's room are completely inedible. I mean, just leftover spoiled scraps.
It's awful.
And Xifeng quietly encourages the household staff to gossip. The text actually notes the servants were pointing at the mulberry to curse the locust.
Which is a great phrase.
Yeah, meaning they were making these indirect, loud, sarcastic jabs at Erjie all day long, just right within earshot.
Right, which serves a dual purpose.
Yeah.
By degrading Erjie's basic physical nourishment and turning the staff into an enforcement mechanism, Xifeng attacks her health and her dignity simultaneously. It signals to the entire staff that Erjie is totally unprotected. But there is a brief interruption to this isolation, courtesy of a maid named Pinger.
Right, Pinger is Xifeng's own trusted maid, but she actually steps out of line. She sees the abuse and secretly uses her own money to buy decent food for Erjie.
It's a huge risk.
It is. Sometimes she'll pretend they're just taking a walk in the garden, and she will have the garden kitchen sneak Erjie some soup. So it's a tiny lifeline. But the new concubine, Qitong, catches them and immediately snitches. She reports back to Xifeng, complaining that Pinger is making it look like Xifeng is starving a secondary wife.
And this forces Xifeng to react. And her response is a calculated strike to permanently sever that lifeline. She publicly reprimands Pinger with a very specific metaphor.
Yeah, she tells Pinger, people keep cats to catch mice, but my cat only bites the chickens.
Yeah.
Why use that specific imagery?
Because it reestablishes the hierarchy of property and loyalty. Xifeng is explicitly stating, I keep you around to hunt my enemies, the mice, but instead you are damaging my own household property.
Oh, wow.
The underlying threat is unmistakable there. If Pinger continues to help Erjie, she crosses the line from disobedient servant to active traitor against the primary wife.
And Pinger gets the message.
Oh, completely. She's forced into submission. She stops visiting Erjie entirely. And with that single sentence, Xifeng removes the only ally Erjie had in that massive compound.
So starvation and isolation weaken Erjie, but Xifeng needs a way to completely break her without taking the blame. So she shifts from passive neglect to active warfare using a human weapon.
Yeah.
She uses a classic stratagem called borrowing a sword to kill. And her chosen sword is the newly arrived Qitong. But let me stop you there for a second. If Xifeng is the manager of the entire household, why doesn't she just pull rank and punish Qitong or Erjie directly? Like, why go through this elaborate shadow game?
Well, that goes straight to the heart of the socio-legal structure of the Qing dynasty aristocratic family. See, Qitong wasn't just hired or purchased on the open market. She was given as a gift to the husband, Jia, by his father, the patriarch, Jia.
Okay.
And in a deeply Confucian society, a gift from a patriarch carries a legal immunity shield. You cannot discipline or reject the gift without profoundly insulting the authority of the giver.
Ah, I see.
It makes Qtong virtually untouchable, even to the primary wife.
So she walks into the house carrying that massive shield of protection, and she absolutely knows it. Plus, she has the husband's full attention. Jia and Qtong are very much in the honeymoon phase.
Oh, yeah.
The text describes them as being in a state of dry wood and fierce fire, which means completely infatuated and inseparable. Jillian is so distracted by this new romance that he leaves Erjie entirely unprotected.
And Xifeng sees this dynamic and exploits it perfectly. She recognizes that Qtong is arrogant, hot-tempered, and feels extremely entitled by her protected status. So Xifeng utilizes a tactic known as triangulation. She pulls Qtong aside secretly and plays the submissive victim.
Oh, this is so manipulative. She tells Qtong, listen, Erjie is the husband's true favorite. Even I have to yield to her and give her 3 points of respect, so you really shouldn't provoke her.
Right.
I mean, it is such a blatant psychological trap. By telling an incredibly arrogant person to back down and show respect to someone with a lower social standing, Xifeng guarantees that Qtong will be infuriated.
Absolutely. What's fascinating here is how flawlessly Xifeng executes the strategy of sitting on the mountain to watch the tigers fight. She validates Qtong's ego, paints Erjie as an illegitimate threat to their shared status, and then just steps back. She doesn't have to raise her voice once. She just winds Qtong up and lets the institutional hierarchy do the damage.
And Qtong unleashes everything. I mean, she starts standing right outside Erjie's window, hurling vile insults. She calls Erjie a whore, shouts that she was seduced first and then married, and claims she's just an unwanted leftover.
It's brutal.
Erjie is trapped inside crying and refusing to eat, but she is too intimidated to tell her husband because he is so obsessed with the woman screaming outside her window.
Exactly.
But why doesn't Erjie go over their heads? I mean, why not go straight to the ultimate authority, Grandmother Jia, and report the abuse?
Because Xifeng and Qtong have already poisoned the well. This is the danger of information silos. When Grandmother Jia notices that Erjie's eyes are red and swollen from crying, Qtong intercepts the narrative.
Right.
She spins a fabricated story to the matriarchs, claiming that Erjie is cursing them all behind their backs, hoping Xifeng and Qtong die so Erjie can monopolize the husband.
And Grandmother Jia buys it completely. She dismisses Erjie, calling her a jealous, ungrateful cheat bone.
Ouch.
Yeah. She notes that Xifeng treats Erjie so generously, yet Erjie repays her with bitterness. Once the ultimate authority figure withdraws her favor, the entire household takes that as a green light to openly trample on Erjie.
So Xifeng has effectively weaponized the entire institutional hierarchy against one isolated person, all while maintaining her own facade of perfect, generous virtue.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, though. The story takes a sudden, deeply psychological, and almost supernatural turn. Erjie has been enduring this relentless proxy abuse for about a month. She is physically wasting away, and she falls deeply ill.
Yeah.
One night, she has a vivid dream where her deceased younger sister, Sanji, appears to her, holding a famous weapon called the Mandarin Duck Sword.
Right. The dream sequence is a profound look into Erjie's internal state and her psychological paralysis. Sanji represents a part of Erjie's psyche that recognizes the lethal reality of her situation.
So Sanji walks up to her and warns her. She says, "You have always been too soft-hearted, and it is destroying you. Do not below Xifeng's sweet words. She is a jealous wife who looks virtuous on the outside but is treacherous on the inside. She will not stop until you are dead." She then offers Erjie the sword, begging her to take it and slay the jealous wife, warning that otherwise she will die in vain.
It's an explicit invitation to claim agency over her own survival, but Erjie's response reveals the core reason why Xifeng's campaign has been so successful.
Erjie refuses the sword. She weeps in the dream and says, "My character was flawed in the past. It's only natural that I'm suffering this retribution now."
Yeah.
She's referring to her behavior before she married Jia, which she feels brought shame to the family. She tells her sister, "I will just endure it. If heaven takes pity on me and I recover, then all will be well."
This raises an important question about the danger of internalized shame. Erjie is carrying a crippling amount of guilt over her past. She genuinely believes she deserves this systemic abuse as a form of cosmic punishment. Her sister explicitly warns her that the heavens don't work like that she is simply going to lose her life to malice. But Erjie is paralyzed.
Her guilt makes her the perfect compliant victim. Because she won't advocate for herself, she relies entirely on the hope of divine intervention. And for a brief moment, it seems like she might actually get a lifeline that could change the power dynamics entirely. Erjie reveals to her husband that she is pregnant. And not just pregnant, but potentially carrying a male heir.
Which is huge. In this society, producing a male heir would radically alter her social standing. It would provide her with a permanent, recognized place in the family hierarchy that even Xifeng would struggle to dismantle.
Right.
Jillian is overjoyed and immediately sends for a doctor, but the sheer dysfunction of the household intervenes once again.
The royal physician Wang is away trying to secure a promotion, so the servants end up hiring a random traveling doctor named Hu Yunrong. And the medical consultation that follows is a bizarre mix of incompetence and tragedy. I have to ask, how did medical examinations even work in this highly segregated society?
It was incredibly restrictive. Male doctors were generally not permitted to directly examine or even look at female patients in aristocratic households. They relied heavily on taking the pulse, often with the patient hidden behind a screen or bed curtains, and asking secondary questions to the servants.
So Dr. Hu comes in, takes her pulse, and starts spouting generic jargon about liver wood generating fire. But he insists that to make an accurate diagnosis, he needs to observe her chi and color, meaning he needs to actually see her face.
Right.
Julian is desperate for a diagnosis, so he allows the bed curtains to be parted just a fraction. But when Dr. Hu sees Erjie, the text notes he is so struck by her beauty that his soul flies to the 9 heavens. He goes completely numb.
It is a dark commentary on the supposed professionalism of the era. He is completely overwhelmed, his mind goes blank, and in his distracted state, he makes a devastating medical error.
He tells the husband that it isn't a pregnancy. He diagnoses it as a blood clot blocking her circulation. To treat it, he prescribes what the text calls a tiger wolf medicine.
Yeah, and in traditional Chinese medicine, tiger wolf refers to highly aggressive, drastic purgatives. These are concoctions meant to violently clear out blockages in the system, typically reserved only for the most robust patients.
Right.
Administering a tiger wolf remedy to a frail, pregnant woman who has been starved and subjected to extreme psychological stress for a month is essentially a death sentence for the fetus.
They brew the medicine, Erjie drinks it, and in the middle of the night, she suffers immense abdominal pain. That is a devastating outcome. She miscarries a fully formed male fetus. The blood loss is catastrophic, and she falls into a coma.
It's heartbreaking.
Her core vitality is permanently ruined. When the husband realizes what has happened and goes to beat the doctor, Hu Junrong has already packed his bags and fled the city. You would think a tragedy of this magnitude would force a pause in the household cruelty. Does Xifeng back off at this point?
Not at all. For Xifeng, this isn't a tragedy. It is the removal of Erjie's final piece of leverage. With the male heir gone, Xifeng moves to close the trap, and she does it through an elaborate display of gaslighting.
While Erjie is lying there critically ill, Xifeng goes to the family altar. She burns incense, prays loudly to Evan, and makes a highly public vow. She says, "If my sister Erjie recovers and can bear a son, I promise to become a lifelong vegetarian and chant to the Buddha's name."
It is a staggering performance.
Yeah.
She systematically engineered the conditions that destroyed Erjie's health, but publicly she casts herself as the devoted, self-sacrificing primary wife, pleading with the gods for her rival's life. The household, entirely blind to the underlying mechanics, praises Xifeng for her exceptional virtue.
With her saintly image secured, Xifeng makes her final move to neutralize her other enemy, Qitong. She brings in a fortune teller to divine the source of the household's bad luck. The fortune teller does the calculations and declares that Erjie's illness and miscarriage were caused by a clash in astrological charts. Specifically, she was crossed by someone born in the year of the rabbit. And out of the entire massive household, there is only one rabbit Qitong.
Xifeng uses superstition, a force that carries immense institutional weight in this culture, to scientifically, at least in their eyes, pin the blame for the miscarriage squarely on Qitong. Xifeng then approaches Qitong with feigned concern, suggesting she hide away for a few months so she doesn't cause any more astrological harm.
Qitong, predictably, loses her mind. She throws a massive tantrum, screaming that she didn't do anything, and then she stoops to the absolute lowest point. She yells out that they don't even know whose child it was anyway, questioning if the baby's surname was Zhang or Wang, publicly accusing Erjie of carrying an illegitimate child.
And this outburst draws in the mother-in-law, Lady Xing. Remember the legal immunity we discussed earlier?
Right, the gift from the patriarch.
Because Qitong was a gift from the patriarch, Lady Xing fiercely defends her, purely out of respect for patriarchal authority. She harshly scolds Jillian and Xifeng for even entertaining the fortune teller's idea of moving Qitong.
Okay, let's shift scenes. It is late at night. The husband, Jillian, is sleeping in the room of Qitong. His powerful primary wife, Fengji, is finally asleep.
The house is completely quiet, but the tension is it's suffocating.
Because while everyone else is asleep, Pinger sneaks out for a secret late-night visit to the severely ill, completely neglected Erjie.
It's a huge risk for her to even be there.
Yeah. Pinger tries to comfort her and advises her to just ignore, quote-unquote, that animal and focus entirely on getting her health back.
And she's clearly referring to her mistreatment there. But during this midnight visit, Pinger actually breaks down crying.
She does.
She blames her own foolish heart and her honesty. She confesses to Erjie that she is the one who originally leaked the secret of Erjie's existence outside the household to Fengji.
Which is wild.
Right, because Pinger was historically loyal to Fengji, never kept secrets from her. But by telling the truth, she inadvertently brought Erjie into this nightmare.
Wait, I have to play devil's advocate for a second. Why is Pinger acting like the victim here? Didn't she basically betray Erjie to Fengji in the first place?
I mean,
It just feels a little hypocritical for her to be crying by the bedside of the woman she helped destroy.
it's easy to see it that way from the outside, but you have to look at the impossible position Pinger is in. She is a servant. Her entire livelihood, her physical safety, depends on her absolute transparency with Fengji, who is practically a mafia boss in this household.
That's a good point.
Pinger didn't act out of malice toward Erjie. She acted out of conditioned survival. Her guilt stems from realizing that playing by the rules of the house resulted in an innocent woman's destruction.
That makes Erjie's response even more surprising to me.
Yeah.
She doesn't lash out. She actually offers Pinger complete absolution.
Total forgiveness.
She essentially says, don't blame yourself. Erjie admits that Fengji would have found out eventually anyway through her own spies. Plus, Erjie confesses that she actually wanted to enter the household properly to establish a formal, dignified status.
It's a devastating exchange.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because what happens after Pinger leaves is chilling. Erjie is left entirely alone in the dark with her thoughts.
We get this grim internal monologue where she assesses her reality with brutal clarity.
Her illness is worsening because she is being intentionally starved of medical care. And the most heartbreaking detail, her fetus has already been miscarried.
She has literally been stripped of everything. Her health, her unborn child, her protection. She realizes the neglect is not an accident. It is a deliberate, slow-motion assassination.
Right.
And she decides that taking her own life is cleaner than continuing to endure this suffering.
Which leads to her fatal decision. She chooses to swallow raw gold. Is that a biological reality? Like, can swallowing gold actually kill you?
What's fascinating here is the specific method she chooses and the reality behind it. In ancient China, swallowing raw gold was a known method of suicide among the wealthy. Biologically, gold isn't chemically toxic, it is inert. But swallowing a heavy, jagged lump of raw, unrefined metal would cause severe mechanical damage to the digestive tract.
So internal bleeding.
Internal bleeding, blockage, or a ruptured bowel. It is a violently painful way to die.
But she considers it cleaner than hanging herself or slitting her throat. She finds a piece of raw gold in her box, forces an unknown weight of it down her throat.
In total silence.
Right, in total silence. And then she does something so striking. She gets up, puts on her perfect clothes, arranges her jewelry, and lies down on the bed to die.
That is her taking back control. She knows that hanging or bleeding out leaves a gruesome scene. By swallowing gold, she leaves no external marks.
It's about dignity.
Exactly. In a house where she has been treated like absolute dirt, her final act is to reclaim her dignity. She ensures that when they find her, she will look immaculate. It's a profound, silent act of defiance.
So fast forward to the morning after. The sun comes up and the neglect just continues. The maids are actually glad that the sick Erjie isn't calling for them.
It means less work.
And Fengji and Qitong just go about their day, completely ignoring her.
It highlights the sheer lack of empathy in this environment. Because Fengji shows no care, the lower-level maids feel completely justified in ignoring her, too.
But Pinger can't stand it. She scolds the maids. She tells them they shouldn't just kick a person when they are down. And the specific phrase she uses in the text is so evocative. She tells them to stop, quote, pushing a falling wall.
That is a brilliant idiom.
Let's talk about that because that feels so universally applicable.
It perfectly captures human nature within a toxic system. When a wall is strong, everyone cowers behind it. But the second it starts to tilt, the second someone loses power, the instinct for many is to walk up and give it a push.
They join in on the destruction just to align themselves with the winners.
Precisely.
Eventually, a maid pushes the door open, and there is Erjie, fully dressed, perfectly put together, and dead. Immediate panic erupts. And this is where we see the absolute facades of grief.
We see a complete spectrum of mourning here, and almost all of it is dictated by fear and status.
Tingera cries genuinely. The other servants mourn secretly because they liked her, but they are terrified of Fengji. Jillian wails and hugs the corpse. But the masterpiece of manipulation comes from Fengji herself.
It is a staggering performance.
She comes in and puts on this incredibly loud, fake display of mourning. She cries out, "Cruel sister, how could you leave me and betray my heart?"
It's gaslighting on a spectacular level.
It really is.
You have to appreciate the psychological warfare happening in that room. The true mourners hide their tears in the shadows. Meanwhile, Fengji, the orchestrator of this misery, performs her grief at maximum volume for the household to witness. By crying out that Erjie betrayed her, she is publicly casting herself as the victim.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The logistics of the funeral become the next major battlefield. Jillian gets permission from Lady Wang to keep the coffin in the Pear Blossom courtyard for 5 days before moving it to Taiyakan Temple.
Which is a big deal for her post-mortem status.
Huge deal. To ensure the funeral has dignity, Jillian actually has workers break open a brand new gate in the main wall facing the street. Why? Just so the funeral procession doesn't have to suffer the indignity of using the back door.
Smashing a hole in a physical wall to preserve face. They will literally alter the ancient architecture of their compound rather than suffer a perceived social slight.
Then, an astrologer, a geomancer, comes to examine the body to set the timeline. He notes that Erjie looks, quote, more beautiful than when she was alive. Hearing this, Jillian breaks down again. He shouts that she died unjustly, crying out that he ruined her.
And this is a crucial moment.
Right, because a relative, Jiarong, steps up to comfort him. But as he does, Jiarong discreetly points south toward the wall of the Grandview Garden.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that single silent gesture tells you everything about how this society functions. Why doesn't Jiarong just say Fengji murdered her?
Because the walls are listening.
Exactly. Spoken accusations can get you destroyed. So communication happens through silent gestures and physical geography. He points south, toward where Fengji resides.
And Jillian immediately understands. He stomps his foot and whispers a vow, "I will avenge you." The truth is acknowledged without a single explicit word.
It's brilliant, but avenging her requires giving her a proper send-off first.
Oh yes, the timeline is set. The astronomer declares she died at the Mao hour and says the funeral must be 3 or 7 days, not 5. Jillian insists on 7 days to allow relatives to attend, but grand funerals require serious capital.
Which turns this hidden power struggle into an outright financial Cold War.
Jillian needs silver for the coffin. So Fengji fakes being sick. She claims Lady Wang told her to avoid the, quote, third branch for superstitious reasons. Instead of helping, she sneaks over to the wall, eavesdrops on Jillian, and then runs straight to Grandmother Ji to complain.
Notice how proactive she is. She goes to the ultimate authority to frame the situation to her advantage.
And Grandmother Jia's reaction is freezing cold. She completely dismisses the tragedy. She says someone who died of consumption should just be burned and scattered or dumped in a random grave, denying the need for any grand funeral at all.
Grandmother Jia's reaction proves that Fengji's cruelty isn't a glitch in the system. It is a feature supported by the highest authority.
Right after this, we get the ultimate financial showdown. Fengji claims poverty. She says they are eating next year's grain and that she pawned gold collars for 300 taels just yesterday. Then she offers Jillian a measly 20 to 30 taels.
So offering 20 to 30 taels for the funeral of a noble family member is a calculated insult. Fengji is squeezing him.
Using the purse strings to humiliate him. Jillian is furious, but completely speechless. So he goes to Erjie's personal chest to use his own secret stash. He opens them.
And they are completely empty.
Every single drop of silver is gone. All that remains inside are some broken hairpins, a few cheap fake flowers, and some old silk clothes. He just bundles them up to burn them, weeping.
This raises an important question for you to consider. What was the actual reality of Erjie's life? She was brought into one of the wealthiest families imaginable, yet her personal safety net was literally nothing but broken trinkets.
Surrounded by gold.
Enough gold to swallow and kill herself with, but she didn't own a single piece of silver to pay for her own coffin. It brilliantly contrasts the illusion of the family's immense wealth against the stark reality of her absolute powerlessness.
But right in the middle of this despair, we get an incredible moment of secret rebellion. Pinger, feeling both heartbroken and ironically amused by the absurdity of the situation, takes action. She steals a packet of 200 taels of broken silver.
A massive risk. If Fengji caught her, Pinger's life would essentially be over.
She pulls Jialin into a side room and covertly hands him the stolen money. She also warns him to stop crying so openly so he doesn't draw attention.
Pure survival tactics.
Jialin agrees. He takes the silver and gives Pinger one of Erjie's everyday skirts as a memento to remember her by. With that silver, he rejects the cheap coffins, rides out, and secures a high-quality coffin for 500 taels on credit. He assigns the morning duties and stays outside to keep vigil.
He finally takes some decisive action.